A major shift just hit gun rights, and almost no one saw it coming. While the media focused elsewhere, a legal earthquake just hit the Second Amendment. And this wasn't just a challenge, it was a collapse, a full takedown of a carry ban that's quietly restricted your right to defend yourself for years. No headlines, no press conference, just a gavel drop. And one of the biggest barriers to lawful carry shattered. The ripple. It's spreading fast, changing how states handle your right to carry for years. They buried your rights under delays, red tape, and gotcha rules designed to confuse and trap. But this ruling didn't tweak the system, it cracked the foundation. Message delivered. Government can't gatekeep your right to self-defense. So if you carry, if you train, if you take protection seriously, listen up. The ground didn't shift slowly. It snapped, and this time in our favor. What happens next will change how you carry, where you carry, and how the law treats your right to be ready. Let's rewind for a second. Remember how carry rights used to be treated? Not like a right, but like a favor. One they'd maybe grant you if you jumped through every hoop, filled out every form, waited months and prayed nothing got lost in the system. You could have a clean record, solid training, pass every background check marks, and still be treated like you were asking for something dangerous. Meanwhile, entire cities turned into don't even try it zones. It wasn't just frustrating, it felt intentional because that was the old playbook. Make it so hard, so confusing that you eventually just give up. But this new ruling, it punched straight through that mindset. It didn't fix everything, but it made one thing clear. They can't keep tightening the screws forever. The pressure is finally shifting, and in this time it's coming from our side. And where did that shift become impossible to ignore? Tennessee. For years, officials there played a clever little trick. Don't ban carry out, right? Just make the map a maze, parks off limits, trails off limits, public spaces where you take your kids. Same story. They weren't banning guns. They were banning confidence, making you so unsure of the rules that you'd rather stay home than risk it. But finally, a judge stepped in and said, "No, this ends here." He went back to the roots, the Constitution. The court asked one simple question: where in American history did we ever say you lose your rights just for stepping into a park? They had no answer, no evidence, no tradition to stand on, so the ban collapsed, and with it the old illusion that they could keep shrinking freedom by drawing more red lines on a map. That moment mattered more than anyone expected, because the second the court demanded facts instead of fear, the game changed. One state stood up, and every other state watching felt the ground shake. And if you think that was a one-time win, just wait until you hear what happened next. Next, the fight moved north straight into Minnesota, and this time it hit a whole generation that had been told to wait your turn. If you were 18, 19, or 20, the message was loud and clear. You're old enough to vote, pay taxes, serve your country, and risk your life, but not old enough to carry a firearm to protect yourself on the way to your car after dark. That wasn't about safety. It was pure disrespect. But then came the pushback, and this time it was different. Lawyers didn't bring emotional arguments or political spin. They brought history. Real facts, laws from the founding era that required 18-year-olds to be armed and ready as part of the militia. Back then, young adults weren't treated like helpless kids. They were seen as responsible citizens, and the court couldn't ignore that. The age limit didn't bend. It broke. Gone. Just like that, millions of young adults stood on equal ground. Another wall came down. Another reminder that your right to self-defense doesn't come with a waiting period. And the momentum kept building because then out of nowhere came a shocker from Washington, D.C. of all places. A city where one paperwork mistake or a misstep in holster type could turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. For years, good people got punished for tiny technicalities while actual criminals walked free. But post-Bruin, things started shifting fast, judges pushed back, defense attorneys started winning, and prosecutors in D.C. began quietly dropping carry cases they knew wouldn't survive under the new standard. No headlines, no press releases, just silence and retreat. And when even D.C. steps off the gas, you know the pressure has flipped. It's not on gun owners anymore, Yan. It's on the people who tried to trap them. But the biggest shock was still to come because then California finally cracked. Not a delay, not a pause, a direct court order, and us with real force behind it. This is the state that built its identity on strict gun control, where permits were dragged out, rules stacked high, and the unspoken message was always the same. We decide how and if you get to use your rights. And at the top of it all sat the Ninth Circuit, long seen as the place where Second Amendment cases went to die. Not anymore. California's long-standing purchase limit didn't just fade away through years of quiet appeals. It got struck down fast and hard. The court didn't hedge or hesitate. It issued a direct mandate. No loopholes, no soft landings, and that ruling did more than end one bad law. It shattered the illusion that even the most restrictive states could hide behind process to control your rights. Because if California, the poster child for gun control, can't defend a restriction under today's legal standard, you better believe other states have even less ground to stand on. This wasn't symbolic. It was a wake-up call. Strategy of slow suffocation is finally cracking. So what does this ruling really tell us? It tells us their playbook is breaking down. For years, the goal was simple: don't ban the Second Amendment outright. Now just choke it quietly. Make it a maze. Hide restrictions behind public safety buzzwords. Turn the process into a patience test, not a character test. They weren't stopping criminals. They were hoping you'd give up. But now, the courts aren't buying it. Judges are drawing real lines. They're not pretending that paperwork-based control is harmless. And when even a court known for siding with restrictions suddenly slams on the brakes, it sends a message. The era of soft censorship is ending. And of course, when power slips, the ones who held it don't just surrender, they scramble. We saw it immediately. Lawmakers tried to repackage the same old tricks under new names. If they couldn't ban carry outright, they'd just shrink where you're allowed to do it. If monthly purchase limits got struck down, they floated compromise limits with new numbers. Different flavor, same control. But here's the problem they're running into now. The courts are watching everything. Judges are no longer looking at what a law says, they're asking why it was written. What's the real motive? And every time a state tries to sneak in a dressed-up restriction, it backfires, it weakens their credibility. And the next court case cuts even deeper because the truth is out. This was never about safety. It was always about control, and now that control is slipping. And look, maybe all of this sounds like legal theory, courtrooms, filings, but the impact, it's real. It shows up in your life. It's the young woman locking up her shop at night in a rough neighborhood. For years, she did everything right, filled out every form, passed every test, but still had to walk to her car with one thought: if someone jumps me, I'm on my own. Now she's not behind paperwork anymore. She's finally on equal ground. It's the college student, 18 years old, trained, responsible, who used to be told he wasn't mature enough to carry courts, just reminded everyone adulthood is not optional, and neither is your right to stay alive. It's the father on a road trip with his family, terrified that crossing an invisible state line might turn him into a felon over a technicality. The new legal standard doesn't erase every risk, but it finally gives people like him protection before they get punished for doing the right thing. These rulings don't live in court documents. They live in nights and commutes and everyday decisions that shape real lives. And when you step back and look at the pattern, it's undeniable. 1 win, maybe noise, 2, a trend, 3, 4, 5, and even the Ninth Circuit starts folding. That's not random. That's movement. What used to be rare victories are now piling up, case after case, judge after judge, and the pressure has finally reversed. The old choke points of control are collapsing, one ruling at a time. But here's the part that matters most. None of this means anything if we get complacent. Court victories don't defend themselves. So here's what I want you to do today, not next week. Check your permit. Keep your ID ready. Review your firearm transport and storage habits, especially if you're crossing state lines. Save the number of a self-defense attorney in your phone, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. And talk to your family about the rules line, because clarity beats panic every time rights grow stronger when the people who hold them stay sharp, informed, and disciplined. And before we wrap, I want to hear from you. Which part of this shift stood out the most to you? Was it the courts finally treating 18-year-olds like adults? The collapse of carry bans disguised as safe zones? Or the moment one of the strictest courts in the country folded under constitutional pressure? Drop your answer in the comments, not just for me, but for every responsible gun owner reading your experience, your gut reaction, your story. That might be the thing that keeps someone else steady when it counts. If this video helped you understand the ground that's shifting under our feet, send it to someone you trust. Help them see what's happening. And because information protects you long before steel ever does, stay sharp, stay ready. These wins are real, but they don't last unless we stay serious. The people who built those restrictions aren't backing down quietly, but neither are we. I'll be watching every case that matters, and you should too.